Good morning, children. Today we are going to study about a different kind of school. You might be wondering what is different in the school. All the schools are similar. Of course, all the schools are similar, children. But the story which we are going to study today is little different from the other schools. So quickly let's start with a chapter. I had heard a great deal about Miss Beam's school, but not till last week did the chance come to visit it. So, children, who is I over here? I is the writer, the narrator of this story. So, he says that he had heard a lot many things about Miss Beam's school, but unfortunately, he did not get the chance to visit that school. When I arrived, there was no one in sight but a girl of about 12. Her eyes were covered with a bandage, and she was being led carefully between the flower beds by a little boy who was about 4 years younger. She stopped and looked like she asked him who had come. He seemed to be describing me to her. Then they passed on. But luckily, children, after a week, the writer, he got an opportunity to visit Miss Beam's school. And when he arrived in the school, he was surprised to see a girl of about 12 years. Her eyes, they were covered with a bandage, and she was led to the flower beds by a small little boy younger than her. She stopped, and it looked like she asked him who had come. Then the boy started describing about the narrator. Then they passed on. Miss Beam was all that I had expected. Middle-aged, full of authority, yet kindly and understanding. Her hair was beginning to turn grey, and she had the kind of plump figure that is likely to be confronting to a homesick child. I asked her some questions about her teaching methods, which I had heard was simple. So now, children, in this paragraph, Miss Beam is described. How did she look like? She was a middle-aged lady, full of authority and kindly and quite understanding. Her hair turned grey, and she had the kind of plump figure. Plump means little fatty figure that is likely to be confronting to a homesick child. I asked Miss Beam few questions about the teaching methods, and then she replied in a very simple way. No more than is needed to help them to learn how to do things. Simple spelling, adding, subtracting, multiplying and writing. The rest is done by reading to them and by interesting talks, during which they have to sit still and keep their hands quiet. There were practically no other lessons. So she started describing about the teaching methods. She said that nothing more is required to help these children to do things like simple addition, multiplication, subtraction, writing. Then she said the rest is done by reading them and by talking interestingly to them, during which they have to sit still and keep their hands quiet. And then she said there are practically no other lessons. The real aim of this school is not so much to teach thought as to teach thoughtfulness, kindness to others, and being responsible citizens. Look out of the window a minute, will you? So Miss Beam said that the real aim, the main aim of this school is not to teach thought as to teach thoughtfulness. She says it is to teach kindness to others and to teach them to become a responsible citizens. Then she requested the narrator to look out for a minute, to look out of a window for a minute. I went to the window, which overlooked a large garden and a playground at the back. What do you see? Miss Beam asked. So the narrator went near the window and looked outside. He could see a large garden and even a playground at the back. Then Miss Beam asked him, "What do you see?" Then the narrator replied. He said, "I see some very beautiful grounds," I said, "and a lot of jolly children. It pains me, though, to see that they are not also healthy and active looking. When I came in, I saw one poor little girl being led about. She has some trouble with her eyes. Now I can see two more with the same difficulty. And there's a girl with a crutch watching the others at play. She seems to be a hopeless cripple." So the narrator says, "I see very beautiful grounds, garden, and a lot of children. They were happy, but it pains me to see that while looking out, they are not so healthy and active." And then he said, "When I came inside the school, I saw one poor little girl being led by a small boy, and she has some trouble with her eyes. And now I see two more with the same difficulty." And then she pointed towards a girl with a crutch, watching the others at play. "She seems to be a hopeless cripple. That is some problem with her legs." Miss Beam laughed. "Oh no," she said, "she's not really lame. This is only her lame day. The others are not blind either. It is only their blind day." So children, what did Miss Beam say? She laughed and she said, "No, they are really not lame, neither blind. It is their blind day and the lame day in the school." I must have looked very surprised, for she laughed again. This is a very important part of our system. To make our children appreciate and understand misfortune, we make them share in misfortune too. Each term, every child has one blind day, one lame day, one deaf day, one injured day, and one dumb day. During the blind day, their eyes are bandaged, absolutely, and they are on their honor not to peep. The bandage is put on overnight, so they wake blind. This means that they need help with everything. Other children are given the duty of helping them and leading them about. They all learn so much this way, both the blind and the helpers. So Miss Beam started explaining as to how these days are being celebrated in their school. So she said, to make our children appreciate and understand misfortune, we've tried to make them share in misfortune. Each child, each term, they has to observe one blind day, lame day, deaf day, one injured day, and even one dumb day. And then she further explained that when there is blind day, the child's eyes are bandaged overnight, and it's their honor, it's their respect not to peep. And the bandage is put on overnight so that when they wake up, they could understand and the others help them, it was their duty. The other children are given the duty of helping them and leading them about, so that they all learn so much this way, both the blind and the helpers. There is no misery about it, Miss Beam continued. Everyone is very kind, and it is really something of a game. Before the day is over, though, even the most thoughtless child really realizes what misfortune is. So Miss Beam further continued. He says there is no harm, there is no difficulty in it. Every child, everyone is very kind, and it is just a sort of a game. Before the day is over, even the most thoughtless child realizes what misfortune is. The blind day is, of course, really the worst, but some of the children tell me that the dumb day is the most difficult. We cannot bandage the children's mouths, so they really have to exercise their willpower. Come into the garden and see for yourself how the children feel about it. Then Miss Beam further explained. She said, some children say that the blind day is most difficult, but some children are of the opinion that the dumb day is the most worst. We cannot stick the bandage in children's mouth, so they really have to exercise their willpower in keeping dumb the whole day. Then she said to the narrator, come into the garden and see for yourself how the children feel all about it. Miss Beam led me to one of the bandaged girls. Here is a gentleman come to talk to you, said Miss Beam, and left us. So Miss Beam took the narrator to one of the girls whose eyes were bandaged, and she said that this gentleman has come to talk to you. Don't you ever peep? I asked the girl. Oh no, she exclaimed. That would be cheating. But I had no idea it was so awful to be blind. You can't see a thing. You feel you are going to be hit by something every moment. It's such a relief just to sit down. So the narrator asked that girl, don't you ever peep? So she explained. She said, no, if I'll do like this, it would be cheating. But I had no idea that it was so difficult, so bad to be blind. You can't even see a thing. And every time you are feeling that you will be hit by something, it's such a relief when you sit down at one particular place. Are your helpers kind to you? I asked. Then the narrator asked the second question. He said, are your helpers, they are kind to you? Then she replied, fairly, but they are not as careful as I shall be when it is my turn. Those that have been blind already are the best helpers. It's perfectly ghastly not to see. I wish you would try. So then the narrator asked, are your helpers, they are kind? So she replied, yes, but not as careful as I am when it is my turn. Those that have been blind already, they are the best helpers because they are perfectly used to. They know how to help others. And then the girl said to the narrator, I wish you also should try. Shall I lead you anywhere? I asked. Oh yes, she said. Let's go for a little walk. Only you must tell me about things. I shall be so glad when today is over. The other bad days can't be half as bad as this. Having a leg tied up and hopping about on a crutch is almost fun, I guess. Having an arm tied up is a bit more troublesome because you can't eat without help and things like that. I don't think I'll mind being deaf for a day, at least not much. But being blind is so frightening. My head aches all the time just from worrying that I'll get hurt. Where are we now? So then they started moving little further. Then the narrator asked, only you must tell me about certain things. Then she says, I shall be very glad when today is over, because the other bad days, they can't be so bad as this day. Then she started describing that when the legs are tied, it's a fun hopping. Then when the arms are tied, though it is little troublesome, that you need somebody's help for eating, and things like that. Then she said, if I'll act as a deaf for a day, at least it will not be so much difficult. But being blind a day, it's really so frightening, because she says that her head pains every time, because the thought is worrying her that she will get hurt. And then she suddenly asks, where are we now? Then the narrator says, in the playground, I said. We are walking towards the house. Miss Beam is walking up and down the garden with a tall girl. What is the girl wearing? My little friend asked. A blue cotton skirt and a pink blouse. I think it's Millie, she said. What color is her hair? Very light, I said. Yes, that's Millie. She's the head girl. There's an old man tying up roses, I said. Yes, that's Peter. He's the gardener. He's hundreds of years old. And here comes a girl with a curly red hair. She's on crutches. That's Anita, she said. So as they were moving on the playground, the students, they were passing by. And then the narrator asked that girl, who is this fellow? Who is this girl? And then the narrator describes the dress which that girl is wearing. Then she comes to the conclusion that that girl is a Millie, who's the head girl. Then he says there's an old man who's tying up roses. Then that girl says that he is the gardener. He is very old gardener of the school. And then the narrator says there's a girl with curly red hair and she's on crutches. Then she says, that's Anita. And so he walked on. Gradually I discovered that I was 10 times more thoughtful than I ever thought I could be. I also realized that if I had to describe people and things to someone else, it made them more interesting to me. When I finally had to leave, I told Miss Beam that I was very sorry to go. Ah, she replied, then there is something in my system after all. So as they all moved on towards the Miss Beam's room, gradually the narrator found out that he was 10 times more thoughtful than he had ever been. He also realized that if he had to describe people and things to someone else, it will be more interesting to him. Then he said that finally he had to leave and he was feeling very sorry to go. But she replied, then there is something in my system after all. So I hope, children, you all have enjoyed the story and liked it. So you also try to be more innovative in your school, thinking and planning about certain things in your curricular activities. Thank you. Have a good day.